Hey guys, I hope everyone's doing really good. It's Go to Your Own Research. It's really good to be back on a live stream. So, we have an update on the Jay-Z versus Tony Buzbee case that I've been talking about for a long time. I know it's been a bit slow lately, but finally something happened. So yeah, I wanted to jump on here and talk about it and explain what's been going on. It's a win for Jay-Z. He has been granted permission by the judge to file a third amended complaint, which he immediately filed. And it's so weird how little coverage this story is getting, because I immediately went to search online to see if anyone was talking about it. And literally, there's like one news article about it. So if you don't know, let's go back to October 2024, yeah? P. Diddy was arrested and facing a trial in the Southern District State of New York, which he's currently serving time for at the moment. The trial happened last year. Okay, so in October, this guy called Tony Buzbee, who is an attorney, a very abrasive, flamboyant attorney, came out of the woodwork and suddenly started appearing on all these YouTube channels and news channels. He did a big press conference saying that he'd set up a hotline for victims of P. Diddy and that he wanted them to come forward and that he was going to represent 120 victims. He accused P. Diddy of being a pedo. He said he was representing a man who'd been assaulted by him as a 9-year-old boy, I think. And then he came up with this other story, or this other allegation, legal, against him by a woman, saying that she was R-worded by him. And there were two other celebrities there. Celebrity A and Celebrity B. And at the time, there was so much talking about the P. Diddy case, the build up to the case, going on for months. People were speculating. A lot of channels were speculating about who were these celebrities, who was Celebrity A, who was Celebrity B. What we didn't know, what we know now, is that behind the scenes, Tony Buzbee had sent a letter to Jay-Z's lawyer saying that he was going to be named in this lawsuit unless he was prepared to make a financial settlement. Jay-Z said, no way. I ain't doing that. I had nothing to do with that. I don't know anything about that. I'm not going to pay you anything. I'm not going to pay for something I never did. So we as the public then hear that Jay-Z has been accused by this woman of being R-worded when she was 13. And with P. Diddy at an event, which you could literally still look up the details of online because it happened in the year 2000, okay? She then went on NBC News and did an interview and said that to be fair, like, the lawsuit was already very vague in its detailing, but then when she went on the news, she started saying that he had put his hand over her mouth, that there were people watching. There's so many things about it didn't really seem realistic. The news channel as well, the NBC, tried to corroborate some of what she had been alleging, such as saying that her dad had come to pick her up. He said that he had no memory of that. The other witnesses that she said she had seen that night, one was someone in a band whose manager came forward and said, nope, they weren't even in they weren't even in the same state then, they were on tour. And then she said that her friend who had dropped her off in the middle of New York City when she was 13 years old after I think it was a 2-hour drive, had died. So nothing she was alleging could be corroborated. So it was all very suspicious, but very shocking at the same time. But then the whole thing got dismissed voluntarily by this guy, Tony Buzbee. Yeah, so I had already by this time thought I need to do my own research, and I had looked up and found out that he was a bit of a shady character that had a very dodgy past, and that he was living very flamboyantly. So I have since found out that he has had some of his clients are suing him because he hasn't paid them. I didn't know that then. But yeah, there has been a New York Times investigation into one of his other operations. So it just seemed really funny to me that when this lawsuit got dismissed, a lot of content creators still wanted to believe that this woman was telling the truth. And they were basically not reading out what the truth was, which is that the lawsuit had been dismissed with prejudice without a settlement. They were like, oh, he must have paid her off, all this kind of stuff. So it's gone on. Jay-Z then tried to sue Tony Buzbee for extortion and defamation in California. That suit didn't go ahead, but the judge did not dismiss it lightly. He said that there was definitely something there to look into. I can't remember the exact details, but by this time, Jay-Z had also done his own investigation. He had hired private detectives, and they had gone and interviewed the woman, and she had openly said on a recording that she never met Jay-Z and that she made it up. Then they said that if in his lawsuit against her, he then filed a lawsuit against her and Tony Buzbee and his partner, and said that if they had Googled her name, they would have found out that she has done this before. She has made allegations against other men that have been dismissed because there was no evidence. So it definitely seems like we have a case here of him being falsely accused of something. There was also I remember this time so well. There's always been rumors about him having a relationship with Foxy Brown when she was 14 years old. And there was a lot of people talking about that at the same time. She actually came out and publicly stated, you all better take my name out of your mouth. That did not happen. So that kind of answered that one. Meanwhile, these smear campaigns against Jay-Z and Rock Nation have been still going on. Meanwhile, there is no one talking about him actually being innocent of this and being falsely accused, which, to be honest, has really, really harmed his reputation. And that is why he is now suing them all. He was suing them in Alabama, which is where she was originally from, where she is originally from, where they originally filed, I think. And that case has now been moved to SDNY. So I have been watching it and waiting for something to happen. They haven't started uploading discovery, but Jay-Z had asked to file a third amended complaint. And the reason for that was because he wanted to take advantage of a particular rule which would give him something like treble damages. Let me just find the article I was going to share to start with. Okay, so This is the only article I can find that has been talking about this, yeah? Jay-Z looks to club a lawyer. This is from yesterday, and it's from a very small publication called All Hip Hop. Even just now, before I came on here, I searched using Google and literally nothing came up. I had to literally put in All Hip Hop because I found this on a different search engine to Google. It says Jay-Z seeks to expand his federal lawsuit against Tony Buzbee with a red attorney deceit claim. Yeah. So this is what he's going for. This article was written before yesterday. There was a hearing in court in SDNY about this third complaint. Because it says here, the proposed amendment I'll just read that bit. Jay-Z is escalating his legal offensive against attorney Tony Buzbee by asking a federal judge to allow a third amended complaint that accuses Buzbee and attorney David Fortney of deceiving both a former client and the court, adding a claim under New York Judiciary Law Section 487 that could dramatically raise the stakes in the long-running dispute. Okay, so the other thing I meant to say is that Tony Buzbee never had a license to practice law in the SDNY, which is where P. Diddy was being tried. He only had a license in the Eastern District of New York. So that is deception. And he used this woman called Antigone Curious, who's also being sued in this case. And she was called in for a sanctions meeting. However, she managed to get on the judge's right side by humbly begging, and the judge did not sanction her. But yeah, that's why all of the cases against P. Diddy were dismissed, that Buzbee was claiming to represent. So he's literally a scammer. He's scammed all of those victims, all of those people. The proposed amendment filed in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York alleges Buzbee orchestrated a campaign of deception after learning he would not be admitted to practice before the court handling the underlying lawsuit against the hip hop mogul. So if the court grants the request, it did. Jay-Z's lawsuit would expand to include allegations that Buzbee and Fortney intentionally misled a party during active litigation, conduct prohibited under Section 487 of New York's judiciary law. Okay? So if we go to Inner City Press, because he was live tweeting it yesterday, this hearing. So it was in front of this Judge Dale E. Ho. He said, I don't need full argument, but I'd like to hear about the plaintiff's NYJL 487 claim. Jay-Z's lawyer. Jay-Z's lawyer is a woman, by the way. I have the greatest respect for Judge Lehman, but the plaintiff in his Delaney case did not have the most effective representation on this. I don't know what that's referencing, but obviously another case involving Judge Lehman. Jay-Z's lawyer. 487 provides for treble damages, while Rule 11 has proved to be weak source. Okay, so this is what they're now arguing over. This is a lot of money. A lot of money at stake here. Here, Mr. Buzbee signed papers in this district without being admitted here. Being admitted subjects one to discipline and sanctions. Judge Ho. If I'm Ms. Kaplan, that's Jay-Z's lawyer, was this in your papers? Roberta Kaplan for Jay-Z. I assume one of my colleagues knows we can submit a letter. Lawyer, it's on page 6. Judge Ho, I see. Kaplan for Jay-Z. I think at the end of the day, our side will prevail. Judge Ho, give me a few moments. I'm going to grant plaintiff's motion to amend CEG Carroll versus Trump in this district. Yes, this claim could have been brought earlier, but that is not a basis by itself to deny leave to amend. Judge Ho, discovery has only just begun. The proposed third amended complaint is largely similar: defamation and malicious prosecution. As to standing, there is, as the curious defendants say, there is an argument only clients can bring this claim. Judge Ho, there is an EDMY case on that, but here we have Judge Crote's decision. Given the conflicting statements, I can't say the claim is futile, and MYJL, JL 487 and malicious prosecution have different elements. So, granted. Status letter by Monday. Counsel for Mr. Carter, Ms. Kaplan, nothing, Your Honour. Nor Curious Doe or Buzbee defendants, adjourned. Okay? So, that was the hearing. Very, very quick. Let's see what he said. Oh, that was just a little bit of the document. Okay, we've got a little video of Inner City Press quickly. So I'm just going to show this, and then we're going to get on to the actual third amended complaint. So it's actually been filed onto the docket. I do not have a Pacer account, but someone has very kindly uploaded it onto X, which is the reason why I was able to do this live stream, because it was sitting there on the docket, and I'm like, oh, someone buy it, please. Okay, let me show you this video quickly.
Okay, here we are, Matthew Russell Lee, Inner City Press, here at the Southern District of New York Courthouse today, Thursday, July 30th, 2026. Now, yesterday we covered the argument in Jay-Z versus Sean Carter versus Buzbee, and they were given, Jay-Z, represented by Roberta Kaplan, was given permission to file the third amended complaint. They're jacking it up. They're saying that Rule 11 sanctions are not enough. Weak sauce is what Roberta Kaplan called it. They're going under New York Judiciary Law 487 and the Undercover Cop. So anyway, find that one on Patreon. We also this morning actually covered a case.
Okay, so that explains it. It's that 487 law, treble damages. I honestly do not know why Tony Buzbee thought this was a good idea. I really don't, because he's also tried to do something in Texas which flopped as well. Got dismissed. Like, the law is definitely looking like it's on Jay-Z's side right now against Tony Buzbee. Yeah. And the other case that we've been talking about involving Tony Buzbee is that he's also partnered with another scammer, another false accuser of black people as well, Alexa Nicholas. But yeah, I just find it very, very interesting that all the Justin Baldoni supporters who for months, if not over a year, have been going on about a privileged white woman falsely accusing a black man, are completely ignoring this case. But I mean, I don't find it that amazing, because it just shows that they are only saying that because supporting Justin Baldoni gets them engagement, whereas supporting Jay-Z does not. Okay, let me turn to this document. Okay, so just to recap, let me take a quick sip of water. This happened in December 24. Jay-Z was named. In October 24 was when Buzbee announced he'd set up this free phone number that Jay-Z actually rapped about the other day in his freestyle at the Roots barbecue. The other thing about, well, there's a lot about Tony Buzbee, but he's not just a MAGA supporter, like he is MAGA. He's a Donald Trump supporter. He's a Donald Trump donor. He donated money to Donald Trump's last campaign. He is MAGA. But yeah, I think that was all I was going to show before I start reading this this complaint. So yeah, like I said, this is courtesy of this account on X called Documentings, who I'm very grateful to for posting this. So he says, the amended pleading alleges that the defendants orchestrated an extortion scheme by knowingly filing false SA allegations against Carter in an effort to pressure him into paying an 8-figure settlement. Carter contends the defendants weaponized the judicial process and the media. You see, this is really someone weaponizing the judicial process and the media to inflict reputational damage after he refused to sell. And then we've got a link to it here. So it's 63 pages. I'm going to try and read it as quickly as I can. Obviously, third amended complaint and demand for jury trial. Sean Corey Carter, aka Jay-Z, against Anthony Buzbee, David Fortney, that's his business partner, Anthony G. Buzbee LP, the Buzbee law firm, Antigone Curris Law PLC, and Jane Doe. So yeah, like I said, Antigone Curris was the woman who he used to file his false, whatever they're called, filings against P. Diddy in SDNY. I guess it's like using a fake ID or something. It's the legal equivalent of, obviously, I am not a lawyer. but I'm the layperson that can still, it would seem, do a pretty good job of understanding how these legal cases go. Because the people that should really, the people that are legally trained, they may know a lot more than me, but they're still not doing an honest job of explaining how these legal processes are really working. They're just telling people what they want to hear. The case is about defendants' deliberate misuse and corruption of the judicial process for unlawful and extortionate ends. Yeah? This is really people doing this, really, actually, real time. Real receipts, real evidence. Defendants knowingly sought to exploit and attempted to profit from the extreme reputational harm that would inevitably result from their filing of sensational federal lawsuit in this district, falsely accusing plaintiff Sean Corey Carter, the artist professionally known as Jay-Z, of R-wording a minor. Their objective was clear: to extract an 8-figure settlement from Carter based on allegations they knew to be false. When their initial attempts to extort Carter, short of naming him as a defendant in a lawsuit failed. Defendants escalated their campaign and did just that. Thus, on December 8th, 2024, defendants, unconstrained by the truth or law, and seeking to monetize blatant lies, held an amended complaint in their lawsuit. Filed an amended complaint in their lawsuit publicly claiming Carter as the previously unnamed celebrity A, whom they had accused of raping Doe when she was 13 years old at an after-party following the MTV Music Awards on September 7th, 2000. So as soon as I started hearing about this, that is what I did. I went and looked it up, and it is still on YouTube. You can still see the actual MTV Video Music Awards on YouTube from that time. You can see the guests who were there. It was like Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, Destiny's Child before they were even that famous. P. Diddy was there with J-Lo. He wasn't even on the red carpet. He wasn't even interviewed on the red carpet, I should say. She was the big star. Jay-Z definitely wasn't interviewed on the red carpet. These allegations were categorically false. At the time they filed their lawsuit, defendants knew, or at the very least, recklessly disregarded, that the accusations they had made were contradicted by publicly available information, internally inconsistent, and unsupported by any credible story or investigation. She said stuff like there was giant TV screens outside the venue, which you can see there isn't. She said that she just walked up to the limos. You couldn't walk up to the limos. It was just nothing. There was just not one thing she said that was accurate, you know? It was well documented and easily verifiable, for example, that Carter was not present at the purported house party where Doe falsely alleges the rape happened, but rather was at the Lotus nightclub after the VMA that year. So she said that it was a big house with a crescent-shaped driveway. P. Diddy lived in an apartment at that time. He did not live in a white house with a crescent-shaped driveway. I remember seeing a video, I can't remember who it was, but one content creator had found some location that they had apparently lived at, which was vaguely white. It wasn't even white, it was like cream. And she was like, oh, it could have been this one. It's like the desperation for people to believe it, but it was obviously a full story. And yeah, there's actually the other thing I did when I was doing my research was you can actually see a picture of him. There's actually a picture of him at the Lotus nightclub on that night. Look, September 7th, 2000. And it's on Instagram and it's posted by a fan account like a long time ago. Like this, it's just like the lack of research by the people who filed the lawsuit is kind of embarrassing because, you know, they could have done a much better job about getting some of the details right. Anyway. Going back to it. So where was I? He absolutely did not have contact with Doe. As the veneer of Buzbee's web of lies and ethical breaches began to crack, defendants' schemes unraveled, and 68 days after falsely naming Carter, defendants voluntarily dismissed their case with prejudice. Yeah, no settlement. He voluntarily dismissed it. Just like that. And just like that, it was over. Indeed. But still, certain YouTube channels carried on making up stories, going, oh, He must have paid her. Indeed, when confronted with the mountain of evidence disproving her fabricated story just 1 week after the voluntary dismissal with prejudice, Doe admitted in a recorded interview that it was all a sham, confessing that Carter didn't SA her and that Buzbee brought Jay-Z into it. During that same interview, Doe revealed that Fortney came to see her in person on February 13th and falsely told her that it was critical that she immediately dismissed the case because they told me Jay-Z was threatening to kill me. That's how she talks. But Doe was no more victim of Buzbee and Fortney's misdeeds. The recording they made is really difficult to understand because there's like this dog that just doesn't stop barking in the background. When asked to put this into an affidavit under oath, Doe's answer to the interview laid bare her real motivation for participating in defendants' conspiracy. How does this help me? While defendants' heinous actions constituted a gross abuse of the judicial system, they actually did. A gross abuse of the judicial system, which cannot be countenanced under any circumstances. They also inflicted grievous harm on Carter, fueled by a press and social media tour orchestrated by Buzbee. The accusations leveled against Carter ignited a firestorm of controversy worldwide, causing tremendous, it does say tremendous, doesn't it, personal and professional reputational harm to Carter, his family, and his business interests. The amount of stuff you have to listen to or see about Beyonce as well, negative. In today's world of instantaneous news and entertainment feeds on social media and elsewhere, the damage done to Carter and to those he loves and who love him as a father, husband, son, friend, and business partner was almost immeasurable. Carter, after all, did nothing to deserve the calculated attack on his character that the defendants carried out. Buzbee was the central actor in defendants' misconduct. For many years, Buzbee has made a business of threatening to file rape lawsuits against celebrities and others. As detailed below, Buzbee's pattern is well established. He solicits potential plaintiffs over Facebook and other social media sites, teases the media with promises of explosive allegations, and then sends a short-fused demand letter insisting on immediate payment. These high-pressure tactics are not good faith attempts to settle legitimate claims. The purpose is extortion under threat of public humiliation and reputational destruction. This is just what all of these people who have been supporting Justin Baldoni have been saying about Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. Where are they? Where's Andy Signal? Oh, yeah, I forgot. He was part of it. He was part of the smear campaign against Jay-Z. Still is, probably. These are precisely the tactics Buzbee used against Carter here. Just days after Sean Combs' arrest in 2024, Buzbee partnered with Andrew von Arsdale, his law firm, Ava Law Group, and his legal marketing company. I have really difficulties pronouncing the name of it. Reciprocity Industries, LLC. Reciprocity, which specializes in identifying potential plaintiffs using TV and social media advertising. And that has also been the subject of prior controversies surrounding its practices. There's an NYT investigation coming up evidence, whistleblowers. Through reciprocity, Buzbee quickly launched a nationwide campaign searching for anyone who claimed to have met Coombs or attended one of his parties. Facebook and Instagram ads urged viewers to find your voice and see if you qualified. Others featured stylized AI-generated images of Coombs sitting inside prison cells. Defendants also promoted a 1-800 hotline for callers to report alleged misconduct involving other entertainers and celebrities. Let me just show you one of the adverts quickly. This is the adverts they placed on Facebook. Yeah. I just can't imagine. I was thinking about that. I can't imagine it now. I can't imagine this was in 2024, but nowadays, some of the adverts I've seen, especially on Reddit, I mean, but yeah, that was what they were putting up on Facebook. And according to the NYT, the New York Times, they received around 26,000 responses, which were routed to its call center in Billings and processed by approximately 70 employees working from a prepared script of intake questions. So these employees were being paid bonuses to sign up as many victims as they could. You could not make this up. Based on that process, and before any real investigation could possibly have been conducted, Buzbee began to publicly and repeatedly threaten that he would soon be suing unnamed powerful people. On September 26, 2024, just one day after he began working with Reciprocity, Buzbee announced that he already represented more than 50 plaintiffs and warned that many other individuals would soon be implicated. 4 days later, on September 30th, 2024, he doubled down on these statements, publicly claiming that his firm would soon be filing lawsuits on behalf of well over 100 alleged victims. I think it went up to like 120 by October, and announcing an upcoming press conference that would concern other potential defendants. On October 1st, 2024, Buzbee held a press conference in front of a backdrop featuring the 1-800 hotline number. Reciprocity, the other firm, was using for Buzbee's solicitation campaign. Buzbee's announced that he now represented 120 vetted and corroborated victims, which were prepared to sue Coombs and unnamed others. So this is the bit that I remember, because he was wearing this pink tie and he had a lot of fake tan on. I'm like, who the hell is this guy? His claims were preposterous on their face. In less than a week, Buzbee and Reciprocity had supposedly identified, interviewed, investigated, corroborated, and vetted 120 discrete claims of rape, spanning decades, and numerous alleged perpetrators, all of which would have required extensive factual inquiries. There was no way a legitimate pre-suit investigation of that magnitude could have been conducted in that abbreviated time frame. Didn't stop all the YouTube channels, literally. Not only posted about it, making content about it, they believed it. They never questioned it for 1 minute. Not one of them. I even said it in a comment. I said it in a comment to Teaser Tales. I was like, don't you think this guy is a bit sus? Notwithstanding the impossibility of his claims, at the October 1 press conference, Buzbee said that additional lawsuits would soon follow and that many powerful people will be exposed, including not only alleged perpetrators, but also individuals who he said had merely attended events with Coombs. Over the next several weeks, on social media, cable television, podcasts, live stream interviews, and entertainment news outlets, including appearances on TMZ, CNN, Fox News, and NBC, he leaked future lawsuits and unnamed defendants while promising that more household names would soon be revealed. When asked in an interview whether threatening sensational allegations through public lawsuits pressures targets into settlements and becomes almost the game, Buzbee said that the system is the system, and if private dialogue fails, we're going to file the case and we're going to pressure it, but we're going to pursue it with aggression. That is precisely what he and the other defendants did to Carter, even though there never was a shred of evidence to support the heinous false allegations that Buzbee and the other defendants made against him. Over the course of his decades-long career, Carter has built a global reputation inside and outside of the music industry. He co-founded Rock Nation, blah, 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 blah. I think we all know, well, most people know, Jay-Z has done a lot in hip-hop. He co-founded Rock Nation in 2008, growing it into the world's preeminent entertainment company, a successful black man. Among the thousands of individuals who contacted Reciprocity in response to Buzbee's solicitation campaign was Jane Doe, according to Van Arsdale's affidavit. Doe retained his law firm, Ava Law, on or around October 14, 2024, to pursue claims against Coombs. We've got a footnote. Okay, it's just a reference to her affidavit. Van Arsdale later acknowledged publicly that Doe was one of the thousands who responded to Buzbee's Facebook ads. Doe would later confess to investigators that she did not independently identify Carter as an alleged perpetrator. Instead, Doe stated that Buzbee brought Jay-Z into it. Despite the gravity of the allegations defendants filed in this court, neither Buzbee nor any of the other defendants conducted anything even approaching a pre-suit investigation. According to defendants' own filings, Doe did not hire Ava Law and Buzbee until mid-October 2024, just days before defendants filed their original complaint with an unnamed celebrity A on October 20th, 2024. We could all check the timeline and see when these videos started going up about it. In that extraordinarily brief period, defendants supposedly investigated allegations dating back nearly 25 years, corroborated witnesses, assessed Doe's credibility, verified the timeline of her story, reviewed publicly available records and other information, and concluded there was a legally sufficient basis to accuse Carter, the unnamed celebrity A, of raping a minor. There was no such investigation. It's really hot. Still, even the most superficial review of Doe's story would have identified readily available information contradicting her narrative of that night's events, along with information about Doe's own background, a criminal record, and a history of mental illness and making false claims of sexual misconduct, raising serious concerns about her credibility. Nonetheless, defendants filed their complaint on October 20th, 2024, in the Southern District of New York against Coombs and unnamed Doe defendants, including the unidentified celebrity A. Although Carter was not publicly identified in the lawsuit, approximately 7 weeks later, that changed as described below. In the interim, on November 5th, 2024, Buzbee sent Carter a demand letter accusing him of horrific conduct and demanding confidential mediation. According to the letter, Doe wanted something of substance. The threat was crystal clear. Unless Carter caved to Buzbee's extortionate demands, defendants would publicly accuse him in federal court of the worst crime there is, really, isn't it? But Carter refused to be extorted. As a result, after weeks of publicly promising that additional famous names would soon be exposed, defendants amended the complaint on December 8th, 2024, to publicly name Carter as Celebrity A, thereby falsely accusing him of raping Doe when she was 13 years old. The timing was no coincidence, as defendants filed on the eve of the Hollywood premiere of Mufasa the Lion King at the Dolby Theatre, where Carter and his wife were scheduled to celebrate their 13-year-old daughter's feature film debut. Instead, on the eve of what should have been a proud and celebratory moment for the entire family, defendants ensured that Carter and his family would walk into an international media firestorm. I mean, this is true. They did involve his daughter in this way. They did seek to cause maximum embarrassment with the timing. I think it's safe to say it was kind of deliberate. Fueled by accusations that defendants knew were categorically false. This timing ensured that Carter would be immediately subjected to intense in-person scrutiny from both the media and important business associates. The timing also coincided with the upcoming meeting of all NFL team owners, which was significant since Carter's company produces the Super Bowl halftime show for the NFL. Well, we all know who is very salty about his decisions there. This foreseeably caused the NFL to have to respond to media questions, which defendants believed would put pressure on Carter. Hours after defendants filed their amended pleading, the allegations against Carter were republished by international news outlets, discussed on podcasts, and smeared across every major social media platform. A bit like when his name appeared in the Epstein files as well, which turned out to be another false flag, because it was just, one, it was like some ridiculous allegation made on a tip line, anonymous allegation. And then there was some other thing where Epstein was actually kind of speaking about him in with quite a bit of admiration. Like, oh my God, Jay-Z must be doing something right. not really suggesting in any way that he was friends with Jay-Z. Okay. Where was I? Sorry. So I'm sure they're going to name some of the podcasts, but I've definitely spoken about this before. It's the usual culprits, but I know Piers Morgan is on there. Piers Morgan had to make a public apology to Jay-Z, actually, for putting out false information. Sean Atwood was definitely on there. I think he had to delete a lot of his content as well. Where was I? Business associates, leaders, investors, and others who work with Carter and his company were forced to address the fallout created by defendants' false accusations, which caused severe disruptions to Carter's business and significant financial injury, including more than $180 million in financing and contracts that evaporated. Is it 150 million? Sorry. I mean, before this, Jay-Z, his name was massive. I mean, I guess it still is, but I think a lot of people heard about this. And like I said, a lot of people, they are tainted. I remember when people started saying he was in the Epstein files. And it was one of the biggest stories as soon as they came out. But it took me a couple of seconds to look it up and realize that they picked on they were just focusing on the wrong people. There are just so many more people that were so much more implicated in the Epstein files that they could have been talking about. As intended, defendants' filing inflicted tremendous harm to Carter's reputation that persists to this day. But the damage was not merely economic. Defendants' allegations emotionally devastated Carter and his children, wife, and family. But defendants did not stop there. On December 8th, 2024, the Buzbee defendants arranged and paid for Doe to travel to their office in Houston, Texas, so she could participate in a televised NBC News interview in the presence of defendant Fortney. During the interview, Doe added new, more serious allegations, including acts of physical violence that she had never previously alleged. In an effort to engender sympathy, she appeared at the interview clutching a stuffed bunny, despite the fact that her extensive social media presence contains no pictures of her holding one, and this was a mere prop placed in her hands by Buzbee and Fortney for the express purpose of seeking to engender sympathy during the NBC News interview. Yeah, I think they were trying to push a narrative that she was severely autistic. If you actually see her, I actually found this girl on TikTok. Would you believe it? She's not a girl, she's a woman. She doesn't give that in her TikTok account, I can tell you. I don't know if it's still up. This complaint came out like a year ago. That's why I'm rereading it today, like we're starting again. But yeah, she has no shame about any of this. And to be fair, they have not doxed her. She's still Jane Doe. She's still anonymous. Her name has not been leaked. I had my sneaky little way of finding her on TikTok, which I call my own version of OSINT. But even as defendants publicly increased the pressure on Carter by adding their allegations, defendant's story began to unravel. It immediately became apparent that basic details of Doe's account were contradicted by publicly available information and video footage from the VMAs that year. Okay, so I've already been over that. She claimed that the after party at which she was raped was held at a large white house with gated U-shaped driveway. See, I remembered all of this. In my video, I even showed a picture of P. Diddy's actual apartment at the time. Which was, I think it was in Manhattan. A large white house with a gated U-shaped driveway located approximately 20 minutes away from Radio City Music Hall. There were no houses like that anywhere near Radio City Music Hall. Exactly. In Manhattan. It was like she, I don't know, seen a picture of him in his LA or Miami house and use that. Doe claimed she watched the VMAs on a Jumbotron outside the venue in Manhattan, but it was easy to confirm that there was no outdoor Jumbotron near Radio City Music Hall that year because the permit had been denied. Yeah, so that also checks out because, like I said, you can look it up on YouTube. Doe claimed that she spoke with Benji Madden at the after party about his tattoo of the Last Supper, but Madden was performing in Chicago that evening. That was stated by his manager. While Doe claimed her father drove overnight from Rochester to Manhattan to retrieve her after the alleged incident, her father stated after her NBC News interview that he had absolutely no recollection of such a trip and would not have forgotten something so significant. Other aspects of Doe's account were internally contradictory or disproven by other information. For example, although Doe alleged that the R word occurred at a residence, which, as noted, does not exist, public records show that Carter did not attend a party at a residence on the evening of the alleged incident. Did not attend a party at a residence. Yeah, he wasn't at a house. He was at a club. Which there's literally photographic evidence of, historical evidence of, metadata. Days after her initial interview aired, NBC News confronted Doe with evidence undermining her fabricated narrative. Cornered, Doe admitted she made some mistakes. This girl's got some front, I tell you. Yeah, I might have made some mistakes. I just went on national news and accused someone of being a pedophile rapist, but I might have made a mistake. Walked back key parts of her story and acknowledged that some of her account was not based on her own specific recollections. These lies are further underscored by the fact that Buzbee had just procured affidavits from Doe shortly before the NBC interview, so Doe's memory, had it been genuine, should have been fresh. On the 14th of February 2025, defendants abruptly dismissed the underlying action with prejudice. The timing was no coincidence. Buzbee dismissed the case, listen to this bit, only after his multiple streams of unlawful and unethical conduct began to show through, and indeed he faced a deadline of being held to account for one of his ethical and rules breaches. He had no other choice but to withdraw it, or he would have faced serious legal implications. Buzbee personally signed both complaints filed in the underlying action, but he was not admitted to practice in this court. Judge Torres, who presided over the underlying action, ordered Buzbee to file proof of admission in SDNY by February 14th. On February 13th, the day before her deadline, Buzbee learned that his application for admission had been denied based on his prior misconduct, as discussed further below, and he proceeded to dismiss the underlying action with prejudice and not pursuant to any settlement the very next day. So none of those YouTube channels were talking about this at the time. Not one of them. 1 week later, Doe admitted to investigators that her allegations against Carter were false. In a conversation recorded on February 21st, 2025, Doe recounted her story, confessed that Carter didn't essay her, and confirmed that Buzbee brought Jay-Z into it. Indeed, she made clear that Buzbee was the one who pushed her to go forward with the false allegations against Carter. She also stated that defendants falsely told her that Carter had threatened her, a fact invented by defendants to pressure their own client into immediately abandoning the case. While Doe has attempted to walk back her admissions in a subsequent declaration, the recording captures Doe admitting that her claims against Carter were fabricated and were part of a conspiracy orchestrated by Buzbee to knowingly and maliciously assert false claims against Carter for settlement leverage. Carter has been living a nightmare since the fall of 2024. He could have paid the defendants, which would have kept all of this out of the worldwide media and avoided the public scrutiny and intense personal anguish that defendants knew would rain down on him. But that was not an option for Carter, as he would not yield to extortioners. He could not and would not choose money over morality. That is not who Carter, a father, husband, a son, a friend, and a trusted business colleague, is. Not anymore. I didn't know thought he used to be a crack dealer. That does not comport with his strongly held beliefs and values. So the only choice left was to fight. This action is the culmination of that fight. I mean, to be fair, I guess that's a legal argument, but, you know, why should he pay if he hasn't done nothing wrong? You know, it basically is extortion. I don't know how else you could describe it. I think the problem was in the California. I'll have to look it up and remember. I know who covered it. Megan Cuniff. She was all over it like a little rat. She's a secret plant, trust me. This action is the culmination of that fight, and it is brought not only to redress the harm to Carter, but to bring an end to Buzbee's and his co-counsel's malevolent efforts to extort a payday by hiding behind the judicial process and a co-conspirator masquerading as a victim. On the date of filing of this case, plaintiff Sean Carter, professionally known as Jay-Z, was a citizen of the state of California. He is now a citizen of the state of New York. Defendant Doe is a citizen of the state of Alabama. Defendant Buzbee is an attorney. He is a citizen of the state of Texas. He is a principal of the Buzbee law firm. Defendant Fortney is an attorney affiliated with the Buzbee law firm. He is also a citizen of the state of Texas. The Buzbee law firm is based in Texas. Okay, so then we've got defendant Antigone Curis is an attorney. She is a citizen of the state of New York. Curis is the sole member of defendant Curis Law. Curis conspired with the Buzbee defendants to extort Carter by, among other things, allowing the Buzbee defendants, who were not authorized to practice law in the Southern District State of... Why do I always say District State? Southern District of New York, to use her electronic filing credentials. Okay, that's what it was. She used her electronic filing credentials to file these lawsuits in SDNY. That's a breach. To file Doe's complaint against Carter on information and belief, Curious did not vet Doe's allegations before she filed her false complaints against Carter. The court has subject matter jurisdiction. Okay, I hate all this jurisdiction. I live in California. I think that they're in good standing with this bit, because I think if they weren't, they wouldn't have got to this stage. I'm not 100% on that, but I hope that isn't going to be an issue. Doe is subject to specific personal jurisdiction in this court pursuant to CPLR. Doe filed, amended, and prosecuted the knowingly false claims against Carter in this district, engaged the Buzbee defendants and the New York-based Curious defendants to bring and maintain those claims here. Yeah, so she originally filed this case in SDNY. Demand for jury trial. He wants this to be heard in front of a jury. Allegations common to all claims for relief. Carter built his life, career, and businesses on his reputation. And you know what he didn't do? Use social media. Carter's name and artistic moniker Jay-Z carry enormous commercial and reputational value that Carter worked to develop over decades as an artist, businessman, investor, and philanthropist. I hate that word. In 2008, well, I was thinking about this today, actually, because I've heard people say stuff like, oh, Jay-Z's anti-black. I actually have met one person I actually know, a family friend, has actually worked for his company in the UK, and I've met someone else that works for him from the US, both black. In 2008, Carter founded Rock Nation, a full-service entertainment company, and he's also married to a black woman that has black kids, through which he expanded into artist management, sports media, consumer brands, and other business ventures. Over the course of his career, Carter's reputation became central not only to his success as an artist, but also to the business partnerships, investments, and philanthropic initiatives associated with his name. The credibility and public trust tied to that reputation have long been among Carter's most valuable professional assets. Defendants knew that publicly accusing Carter of raping a child would place extraordinary pressure on every aspect of his life and business empire he spent decades building. Indeed, that was the whole point of what they were doing. In September 2024, the Buzbee defendants launched an aggressive campaign to solicit plaintiffs. On the 17th of September, Sean Diddy Combs was arrested and charged in a 3-count indictment with racketeering, conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution. The charges predictably drew enormous public attention. Buzbee, for his part, saw an opportunity for easy money and within days began moving to capitalize on the attention by assembling a plaintive recruitment campaign targeting Coombs and anyone else who knew him or had allegedly attended the same event as him. I love this photo. Buzbee is a prominent Texas-based lawyer who publicly embraces his reputation as an aggressive, high-profile litigator. He frequently posts photos of himself traveling on his own private jet. This is such a red flag. Such a red flag. Spending, you know who else had a private jet? This is what I said to Tisa Tells. Like, he's giving me Tom Girardi vibes. Tom Girardi turned his law firm into a pyramid scheme. Meanwhile, he was buying private jets and paying for his wife, Erica Jane, to pretend to be a pop star. And he was also paying off senators and judges. So he could get away with his very long ongoing scheme of not paying his victims. He frequently posts pictures of himself traveling in his own private jet named Lawsuit Air, which is painted with the image of a shark. He has a shark in his office. He says he calls himself a shark. Literally, when people tell you who they are, he is not doing this for ethical reasons. He's a predator. He's literally telling you he's a predator. The same motif that appears on Buzbee's website, where Buzbee describes his litigation style as hitting fast and exploiting weaknesses. Yeah, it's the shoes for me as well. I mean, Jesus wept. The dog and the shoes and whatever that is. I don't know. Ugh. Right. On information and belief, about a week after the Coombs indictment became public, Buzbee contacted Andrew Van Arsdale, an attorney and principal at Ava Law Group. Okay. I'm not reading all this because I can't say that name anymore. Oh, okay. These bits are important. Right. Reciprocity is a controversial player within an already controversial industry. In 2021, a former employee blew the whistle on their aggressive tactics in the Boy Scouts of America's sexual abuse case. The whistleblower submitted an affidavit revealing that the employee rejected approximately 10 out of the 6,000 claimants that she spoke to. She was paid $11 to $12 an hour and a $200 weekly bonus if she signed up 20 claimants, and an additional $100 bonus for every 10 claimants she signed up after the initial 20. Reciprocity would keep track of numbers using whiteboards everywhere in the office on which numbers of claims were written. Claimants signed contracts authorizing reciprocity to keep 40% of any amount awarded. Reciprocity told employees that they should push through proofs of claim without the claimant's signatures. In those cases, employees electronically affixed signatures to proofs of claim by copying them from contracts and passing them onto claim forms. When claimants changed their minds without pursuing a claim or were told they did not qualify, employees were instructed to leave the claim on file, but to inform the client that their claim had been cancelled, even though they had not. At times, employees were told to change the details of a caller's story in order to make their claim seem more viable. Van Arsdale claims that reciprocity stopped using incentives after the Boy Scouts litigation. However, he has also insisted that the same kind of rigorous vetting process that we have and exists today existed then. See March 2025 New York Times article. Yeah, so the New York Times did an expose on them. Funnily enough. New York Times. New York Times have never lost a defamation case, by the way. It's a lot to get through. So basically, Buzbee hired that reciprocity firm to recruit potential victims that he could file lawsuits that he didn't have any jurisdiction to file against P. Diddy in SDNY using these kind of AI adverts on Facebook, and they had 26,000 respondents. Unbelievable. Look at that one with the woman in the background. Sean Diddy Coombs accused of horrific crimes. Were you affected? The world is watching P. Diddy's case unfold. So this is a screenshot from the New York Times article showing the script that they read out from at the call center. It was a boiler room call center where employees walked callers through a questionnaire entitled Buzbee Ava Sean Coombs Abuse. Defendants had no interest in the truth. As detailed in a declaration filed in the underlying action, a whistleblower came forward with a damning account of the Buzbee law firm's practices. The whistleblower initially contacted the firm regarding trafficking and abuse allegations that were entirely unrelated to Coombs or Carter. Yet Buzbee firm representatives repeatedly asked when she had met Diddy, despite her account having nothing to do with Coombs. The Buzbee firm encouraged her to pursue claims anonymously, even though she had no interest in doing so. When she expressed a desire to speak with law enforcement, she was told it was not encouraged. In subsequent conversations, the whistleblower felt the Buzbee firm pressured her to fabricate allegations that she had been drugged, held down, and physically assaulted. Allegations that were simply not true. When she refused to adopt the false version of events proposed by members of the Buzbee firm, she was summarily dropped as a client. On September 26, 2024, just one day after the Buzbee defendants retained reciprocity, Buzbee publicly announced on Instagram that the Buzbee firm had been associated by the AVA law group to act as lead counsel to pursue claims on behalf of more than 50 individuals. Buzbee also ominously warned that many other individuals will be implicated. 4 days later, he issued a press release The press release made clear that the press conference would serve two purposes: one, to publicize the claims, and two, generate more calls. The SA hotline, 1-800-200-7474, blah, 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 blah. I just thought it was so weird, honestly, when I saw it. I was like, what am I watching? To heighten public interest, the press release teased that the conference would include information regarding other potential defendants. But like I said, the commentary channels lapped it up. On October 1st, 2024, I wasn't doing commentary about P. Diddy then. I thought it was like a bit out of my league. But, you know, I guess if something like that was to happen now, I would probably feel a lot more confident. On October 1st, 2024, only 6 days after Mr. Buzbee and Mr. Van Arsdale agreed to work together, they held the promised conference. Mr. Buzbee stood in front of a sign featuring the 1-800 number. There he is. See what I mean? And I just looked at her and thought, she looks so serious and kind of really? During the press conference, Buzbee was flanked by a representative from the National Victim Advocate, a recently formed organization with limited experience. Yeah, she looked a bit out of her depth. So that was what he announced at the press conference. He was basically alluding that there were going to be other people involved. Okay, so this is now the little press tour that he did a bit of a Brian Friedman style press tour to publicize himself. He repeatedly threatened to sue and publicly expose people who merely attended the same parties or were in the same room, complicit and otherwise connected to Sean Combs, P. Diddy. Yeah. So I don't know if you remember at the time or if you were even following it, but the amount of speculation and videos that were coming out of these white parties, because everyone just assumed that the freak-offs were happening at the white parties. And so anyone who went to a white party was being scrutinized, when it turned out they were on separate occasions. The white parties were promotional marketing events. The freak-offs were things that he was doing with his girlfriends. I say girlfriends. Buzbee then took his campaign to the press between October 1st and... He warned that people he intended to target already know who they are, that they should come forward now, and that you can't hide skeletons in the closet forever. I mean, that is some advice you maybe want to take yourself, Tony Buzbee. Buzbee then took his campaign to the press. Between October 1st and October 20th, 2024, Buzbee gave at least 10 national media interviews designed to publicize the hotline, generate more claims, and pressure unnamed targets who had not yet been sued. These interviews included October 1st, 2024, Chris Cuomo. I'm definitely getting much more familiar with some of these names in the American media. October 2nd, 2024, Elizabeth Wagmeister, CNN. October 2nd, 2024, Jesse Walters, Fox News. October 2nd, 2024, Sierra Gillespie, Law and Crime Network. Talk about exploiting victims, Law and Crime Network. A master's at it. October 3rd, 2024. Chris Hansen, True Blue Streaming Network. Chris Hansen, isn't he the guy that does like pedophile captures? October 3rd, 2024. Stephen A. Smith, The Stephen A. Smith Show. October 7th, 2024. Harvey Levin, TMZ. October 8th, 2024. Sean Atwood, Atwood Unleashed. October 8th, 2024. Piers Morgan Uncensored. And October 20th, 2024. Chloe Mellis, NBC News. During his media blitz, Buzbee repeated the same threats. When asked whether the additional targets would include household names, celebrities, and executives in the entertainment industry, Buzbee answered all of the above, yes. Remember, the other day I did another live stream about, I'm trying to remember who was, I can't remember who it is, but someone is suing someone about this, about using paid for, it's another orchestrated smear campaign. I've forgotten the context of it, but Sean Atwood was implicated as one of these accounts that has been linked to cryptocurrency transfers. And that he's part of these orchestrated troll farms that are used specifically for smear campaigns. Interestingly. In another interview, Buzbee stated that he was going to be joining defendants in these cases that are going to raise some eyebrows, and how everybody was turned into, who are the celebrities that might be named. I just think it's funny that I don't think not one single one of these channels or news stations has reported on the follow-up story that Buzbee made these claims under false pretenses. Buzbee also made clear that he was using the threat of criminal exposure as part of the same public pressure campaign. In one interview, Buzbee warned that whether they can be criminally charged or even civilly sued, people should know that they knew and they didn't do anything about it. In another, he stated that people right now who know that they were somehow involved were trying to distance themselves, but warned, we know who they are, or we will find out who they are. Buzbee added that we're at the tip of the iceberg. Buzbee further acknowledged the obvious reputational danger created by his public naming strategy. In one interview, he admitted that the allegations are the type that would be very hurtful to people if they're not true, and very hurtful, frankly, if they are true. But Buzbee pressed forward anyway, publicly warning that additional people would be named in lawsuits, that some of the names would shock the public, and that some defendants would raise some eyebrows. When Harvey Levin asked Buzbee about the criticism that threatening to put embarrassing allegations in a complaint can force a settlement and becomes almost a game, Buzbee responded that it was a fair point, adding that the system is the system, and if it's a gulag, if you will. Buzbee then explained that he always attempts to resolve cases before filing suit. But if that effort fails, we're going to file the case and we're going to pursue it with aggression. Buzbee described the pressure strategy plainly. If dialogue fails, we just file a lawsuit. Throughout these appearances, Buzbee falsely portrayed the claims I wonder what dialogue he had with Brian Friedman. Zero. Throughout these appearances, Buzbee falsely portrayed the claims as carefully screened and vetted. Buzbee's public threat strategy was not new. Courts and other litigants had previously criticised Buzbee for using media pressure, improper solicitation, and litigation threats in ways that mirror the tactics used against Carter here. In one prior matter, an Iowa court revoked Buzbee's pro hac vice admission after finding a pattern of ethical violations, including prohibited solicitation tactics and extrajudicial statements to the media that improperly asserted a foregone conclusion about the defendant's liability. In another matter, Buzbee failed to disclose that revocation when seeking admission in federal court, prompting that court to refer the issue to the chief judge. These prior incidents mirror the tactics the Buzbee defendants employed here: an explosive accusation, a private demand for confidential resolution, and the threat of a public filing that would trigger massive reputational harm. Indeed, Buzbee's prior conduct and public statements effectively spelled out the strategy he would use against Carter. Around October 14th, Doe responds to Buzbee's solicitations. Defendant's solicitation campaign worked. According to Reciprocity, the advertisements and hotline generated about 26,000 contacts related to allegations concerning one of those 26,000 contacts was Jane Doe. On information and belief, she retained Van Arsdale's law firm to pursue claims against Coombs. According to Van Arsdale, Doe came to Ava Law Group through the very solicitation campaign the Buzbee defendants had launched. Van Arsdale told the New York Times that Doe contacted Reciprocity last fall after responding to a Facebook ad. According to Doe's father, however, Fortney initially solicited Doe as a client, but Doe did not start any of this and was told that her photographs were found in Coombs' belongings. I forgot about that bit. Or maybe it was new. Yeah, by the way, this girl, she's a woman. She's had her kids taken off of her. She is financially supported by her parents, still lives with her parents. And her parents have been forced into bankruptcy. Either way, Doe has since confirmed that she did not independently seek out the Buzbee defendants to accuse Carter of anything. According to Doe, Buzbee was the one who brought Carter into the story. Doe further admitted that Carter did not assault her, but that Buzbee pushed her toward pursuing claims against Carter. When asked whether Buzbee brought Jay-Z into it, Doe answered that Buzbee was the one that kind of pushed me towards going forward with him, with Jay-Z. That's how she says it. She has a really high voice. After Doe was connected to Ava Law, Van Arsdale testified that Ava Law vetted Doe's story. Van Arsdale claims Doe was interviewed and evaluated by an intake specialist as well as at least one attorney. On information and belief, within days, if not hours, of Doe retaining Ava Law, a draft of Doe's complaint was sent to the Buzbee defendants. Buzbee has since testified that after he received the draft complaint from Ava Law, the Buzbee law firm also engaged in further rigorous due diligence to investigate the veracity and legal viability of Doe's claims. So one thing I remember when it was read out, when I first heard about this claim, and it was Celebrity A and Celebrity B, it was just so vague. And they had, the only picture they had, was of this little vial of what they said was GHB. And I'm like, that just doesn't look realistic at all. Like the stories I've heard where girls have been like drugged with GHB, they've never been presented it in a little vial. Is it vial or vial? It looked, considering it the timing of it was in 2000, this thing looked a lot more kind of modern, if you know what I mean, in terms of like, I don't know. That was something that I just thought that don't look real. That was before I even looked up all the other information. Because I think she kind of said like, oh, they like poured this into a drink, and it's like, yeah, I don't think anyone would be that stupid to do that, like at a public party. But anyway, that was another thing as well. It was like there was a party that Jay-Z was pictured at with, not Jay-Z, sorry, P. Diddy was pictured at with J-Lo. Well, I think it was at the same club. And there wasn't anyone, you could see there wasn't a single person that looked 13 years old there. If she had been in that environment, she would have stood out like a sore thumb. There was just so many things that I was just like, nah. According to Buzbee, his firm also engaged a retired police detective to gather facts about elements of Jane Doe's claim. Those statements are all lies. As described below, any vetting could only have occurred over at most a 6-day period, while defendant was supposedly vetting hundreds of other potential plaintiffs. In any event, defendants proceeded to file and publicize allegations they knew or recklessly disregarded were false anyway. At a minimum, defendants were required to engage in rudimentary vetting, which they did not, which would have revealed Doe's long-running and recent history of mental illness and multiple false and unfounded SA allegations. Multiple. Not many people can say they've got multiple false and unfounded SA allegations. Although Buzbee is admitted to practice in the state of New York City, he has never been admitted to practice in the SDNY. Fortney is not admitted to practice in New York State or this court. Nevertheless, in their desire to file suit in the waning days of the extended statute of limitations provided for in the New York City Victims of Gender-Motivated Violence Protection Act, defendants conspired to make use of Curis's admission to this court and access to SDNY's electronic filing system to file the fraudulent and baseless claims against Carter in federal court in a public filing available to anyone with a Pacer account. In doing so, Curis furthered the aims of the conspiracy by becoming a direct participant in her co-defendant scheme against Carter and aiding and abetting their actions to Carter's significant financial and personal detriment. I imagine that this Antigone Curis is going to try and wiggle her way out of any accountability in this somehow. I don't know how she's going to do that, but she managed to get off being sanctioned. So I'm sure she'll have something lined up to claim that she was innocently duped. So this was... this was not an isolated incident. Judges in this district have previously found that the Buzbee defendants used Curis and her ECF credentials to litigate in this court while avoiding the rules governing admission to this district. I did not know that. In another Coombs-related case, McCrary versus Coombs, the Buzbee defendants and Avalor used Curis's ECF credentials to litigate in this district, even though Buzbee was not admitted. In the McCrary district, Judge Mary K. Viscosil denied Buzbee's 11th hour motion for pro hac vice admission and his motion to withdraw. In her order, Judge Viscosil found that Buzbee had previously improperly filed numerous actions in this court and scores of submissions in this case and other cases using the ECF credentials of another attorney without even having applied for regular or pro hac vice admission to the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York. Curtis's complicity in Buzbee's improper conduct may be grounds for sanctions. Buzbee's application for admission to SDNY was belated and denied because he had appeared in cases without seeking admission. Curis filed an undated declaration attesting that Buzbee told her that he was never denied admission by any court, despite the grievance committee's order, which was annexed to Buzbee's affidavit in support of this PHV motion, doing just that. Yeah, this is what I remember. And then she had a sanctions meeting and she got off. Mr. Buzbee improperly filed and litigated this case using the ECF credentials of local counsel whose apparent complicity in this improper conduct may be grounds for sanctions. Plaintiff's counsel is on notice that further failure to comply with the procedural rules that govern SDNY and her ethical responsibilities will have grave consequences. Curis, for her part, tried to minimize the problem. In a letter to Judge Viscosil, Curis denied that Buzbee improperly filed and litigated the case using Curis's ECF credentials, calling that assertion simply not true. Curis represented that she reviewed all documents in this case and filed them under my ECF because I approved them. Judge Viscosil was not persuaded. On March 28, she issued an order to show cause requiring Buzbee's local counsel, Curis, to explain why she should not be sanctioned for making false or misleading representations to the court. Judge Viscosil explained that Ms. Curis, who represents her in her letter, that she reviewed and approved all documents before filing them on ECF, filed a document that directly contradicted her own affidavit. At the ensuing hearing on April 14th, Judge Viscosil stated Buzbee then moved to withdraw his admission even though he never had been admitted, and I issued an order in which I simply reminded you, counsel, of your obligations to be careful about what you are filing. And I did call to your attention the displeasure about things being filed that had been signed only by Mr. Buzbee, but that were filed under your ECF credentials. And rather than just taking to heart my calling to your attention potential issues which may be happening in other cases as well, you chose to double down. And you filed a letter with the court saying, I review everything and I approve it for accuracy. I don't know how you could have reviewed the Pro Hac Vice application and confirmed its accuracy when right on top of your affidavit, which is undated and simply signed, there was an affidavit from Mr. Buzbee saying that he had been denied admission to the Southern District, which is directly at odds with what he reportedly told you. Oh, gosh. Okay, well, that's why she's involved. We're still only halfway through. Defendants ignore obvious issues with Doe's credibility and narrative and publicly accused Carter anyway. By October 2024, public records show that Doe was suffering with personal and financial hardships. At that time, she had already had custody. She had already lost custody of her children. And her parents, who on information and belief supported Doe, had recently suffered their own financial hardships and filed for bankruptcy protection. Open source information also revealed that Doe has a long history of mental health and substance abuse issues. A simple Google search or other public record search by any of the defendants of Jane Doe using her real name would have immediately raised legitimate questions about her credibility, among other things. A basic pre-suit investigation would have identified records showing that 90 days before filing her lawsuit against Carter, Doe had been in mental health court. About 22 months before filing her lawsuit against Carter, Doe was charged with assault in the second degree and had attempted to take her own life. Doe, according to the public testimony of her psychiatrist, suffers from severe mental health disorders, takes multiple prescription medications, and has a history of hallucinations. And on 3 previous occasions, Doe has made unrelated, false SA allegations against others, which were either dropped by her or dismissed by courts. So this is the 4th time she's done it. Notably, Doe freely talked about many of these allegations on her social media, but made no reference to the false allegations about Carter. Doe also discussed and promoted a pedophile on her social media. Oh my God, I didn't read that bit before. These circumstances called for careful, independent corroboration of Doe's allegations before any attorney could responsibly rely on her in accusing Carter or anyone else of one of the most serious crimes imaginable. Right? This is crazy. What's more, as detailed further below, key aspects of Doe's allegations are contradicted by publicly available sources documenting the night in question. The Buzbee defendants and curious defendants had a duty to conduct a reasonable investigation before filing a federal lawsuit accusing Carter of. Had they done so, that investigation would have uncovered that Doe's claims were false, which NBC News easily identified within 24 hours. But rather than responsibly investigate, defendants did the opposite. They solicited Doe, shaped her allegations, ignored obvious credibility problems, caused her to sign numerous knowingly false affidavits, and used her as the vehicle for a public pressure campaign against Carter. There's another story that came out. So there's a few stories about Tony Buzbee's very, very shady personal life history. Okay, so he managed to get himself out of a DUI charge. So there's actually a mugshot of him online. I think that was in 2016. In 2017, a woman who looks pretty beat up in the picture, was arrested at his house, who he was apparently out on a date with. And it was like literally on Christmas Day or something. Like, such a weird, unbelievable story. And she was apparently like smashing up some of the artwork at his house after they'd been out on a date. And then I'm not sure if it's her or another one said something about he gave her an STD, and he promised to give her like a free legal representation to divorce someone or something. Like, it's just so dodgy. But clearly, he has a history of promising vulnerable people and getting involved with vulnerable people. Yeah, making promises to them. Targeting, maybe, I could say. Those allegations were not merely uncorroborated, they were blatantly contradicted by readily available records, witness accounts, and Doe's own later admissions. As alleged above, Doe retained Ava law firm. They filed a fraudulent lawsuit with critical assistance from the curious defendants. As part of defendants' conspiracy, her lawsuit initially implicated an unnamed celebrity A and celebrity B. It did not identify Carter by name. Van Arsdale has since admitted that although Carter was not named in the lawsuit, Carter was celebrity A and was one of the Does 1 to 10. Doe's original pleading set forth a facially impossible narrative. Doe claimed that on September 7th, 2000, when she was 13 years old, a friend dropped her off near Radio City Music Hall in Manhattan in the hope that she might gain access to the VMAs. According to Doe, after she was unable to talk her way into the event, a limousine driver purporting to work for Coombs invited her to an after party. Doe further alleged that around 9:30 or 10 p.m, the driver took her to a large white house with a gated U-shaped driveway located roughly 20 minutes away from Radio City Music Hall. Doe further alleged that after accepting a drink, she felt woozy and lightheaded and found what she believed to be an empty room. Doe then alleged that Combs and celebrity A raped her while celebrity B watched. So I just remember people speculating that celebrity B was Jennifer Lopez, who is another woman about whom there are multiple smear campaigns. There was just so many people being smeared to distract from this whole P. Diddy. What came out in the evidence in court was nothing like what was being talked about before the trial. It was like two different narratives, 100% different. Nothing about it was related to what people have been saying up until the trial started, pretty much. Apart from maybe the incident that happened in the hotel that we saw in the video. The timeline surrounding the filing of Doe's complaint undermines defendants' later claims that they conducted any pre-suit investigation that vetted Doe's allegations. Buzbee had claimed that Ava's law referred Doe to him in early 2024 after Ava had conducted an investigation. Declaration of Anthony G. Buzbee dated 22nd January, but Van Arsdale later stated that Doe did not retain Ava law firm until October 14th, 2024. That left at most 6 days for Ava Law and the Buzbee defendants to investigate Doe's allegations before filing the original complaint. During that same brief days-long period, the Buzbee defendants also claimed to be vetting more than a dozen other Coombs-related cases in New York and federal court. Okay, so they're just saying that it's just not possible that they vetted her. Buzbee's public statements further undercut defendants' claim that they conducted a reliable investigation. During his October 2024 media tour, Buzbee, well, none of those channels he goes on, the only one that did any vetting was NBC. During his October 2024 media tour, Buzbee admitted to journalist Chris Hansen that he had received unsolicited materials through email and social media, including videos and pictures and stuff, that were without context and difficult to understand. Yet, defendants still proceeded to file Doe's complaint and later used the allegations as leveraged against Carter for settlement leverage. Well, I don't know if he's talking about that picture of that little thing I was just talking about, but literally is what I'm talking about. So random. A few weeks after filing her complaint, Doe and the Buzbee defendants sent Carter a demand letter on November 5th, 2024, accusing him of raping Doe as a minor and threatening to publicly identify him if the matter was not resolved confidentially. The Buzbee defendants claim that Fortney and a Buzbee law firm associate obtained Doe's permission to send the letter on a phone call on or around November 4th, 2024. The letter repackaged many of the allegations from Doe's public complaint against Combs and Doe's 1 to 10, including allegations that later changed when Doe amended her pleading. The message was unmistakable. Unless Carter paid, defendants would amend Doe's complaint to unmask Carter as Celebrity A and add Carter as a named defendant. Defendants used the already filed complaint as leverage. Doe and her lawyers threatened to take a different course unless Carter agreed by November 19th, 2024, to participate in a confidential mediation to resolve this delicate and important matter. That gave Carter only 2 weeks to avoid public exposure, and the price was clear. Doe wanted something of substance by way of a settlement. I thought he said something about 8 figures. However, as discussed, Doe and her lawyers had already sued Carter, albeit as one of the Does. They demanded Carter either pay something of substance to stop Doe from making public the wildly false allegations of rape that would subject Carter to public humiliation and irreparably harm his reputation, family, career, and livelihood, or endure catastrophic financial and personal ruin. The Buzbee defendants' statements and correspondence made clear the immediate and real threat of public exposure if Carter failed to pay. The Buzbee defendants' demand letter was designed to force Carter into a confidential process before they would provide meaningful corroboration. This framework was not a legitimate effort to evaluate Doe's claims. It was the same public pressure strategy Buzbee had spent weeks advertising in the press: threaten a catastrophic public accusation, withhold meaningful information unless the target entered a confidential process, and then use the threat of public ruin to extract a settlement. In other words, blackmail. Doe amends her lawsuit to allege that Carter was Celebrity A, unwilling to capitulate to defendants' extortion on November 18th, 2024. Carter filed a lawsuit against Buzbee for extortion and intentional infliction of emotional distress based on the letters he had received from the Buzbee defendants. In that action, Carter explained that through the letters described above, Buzbee was shamelessly attempting to extort exorbitant sums from him or else publicly file wildly horrific allegations against him. On December 8, 2024, defendants humiliated and exposed by Carter's lawsuit filed an amended complaint revealing that Carter understood all along that one of the anonymous Doe's defendants had been used as a sword of Damocles over Carter's head as a threat of what would happen if he did not succumb to the extortion scheme. Doe's amended complaint made wild, horrific, but utterly false claims against Carter, identifying him by name as the previously described celebrity A from the original complaint. Defendants also added new demonstrably false factual allegations, including that during the VMAs, Doe, without a ticket, remained outside with others and watched the VMAs on a jumbotron. Defendants' intent was clear: to cause maximum harm to a remarkably successful businessman who is at the very top of the music industry and the business world, and who is unrivaled in fame and influence, all in an effort to place Carter in such fear for his reputation that he would capitulate to their unlawful monetary demands. Defendants thus knowingly filed a false complaint, meaning naming Carter not to obtain judicial relief, but as a vehicle to publish and disseminate Doe's implausible and false rape accusation, and as a device to shield her later defamatory statements to the press. By cloaking Doe's fabricated narrative in the form of a federal court pleading, defendants weaponized the judicial process itself. They leveraged the litigation privilege to broadcast otherwise actionable accusations with impunity, lent a shroud of legitimacy and judicial imprimatur, the words they come out with, to allegations they knew of, recklessly disregarded to be false, and ensured that every news outlet, social media platform, and commentator would republish the complaint under the protective banner of court filings. In short, Doe and her co-conspirators exploited the courthouse just as not as a forum to vindicate any genuine grievance, but as a publication platform, using the complaint to manufacture judicial cover for a defamatory narrative they intended from the outset to amplify in the press and use as leverage to extract a settlement from Carter. Wow. A simple Google search or other basic investigation would have revealed that Doe's allegations against Carter were demonstrably false. Okay, so we've already been over that. So they're basically breaking down the facts that are refuted by literally going online. So there's one there's no residence that looks like what she described within 20 minutes of the location. Like, she literally chose a specific event. Do you know what I mean? She could have said it was on a random night, but this is what they came up with. something which could be debunked. Second, so they're disputing that this whole thing about it being 20 minutes away, just impossible. Then obviously there's the Jumbotron screens that didn't exist. What's third? Okay, that was third. Fourth was she alleges that after the attack she ran until she reached a gas station, so she didn't know which gas station it was. She called her father, who then arrived to pick her up shortly before dawn. Based on their then address, which was Rochester, New York, Doe's father would have had to drive at least 5 hours and 47 minutes. Oh my God, I thought it was like 2 hours. There's just no way that he would have driven for 10 hours and then gone, I don't remember that. No way. When questioned about the alleged pre-dawn pickup and drive home with Doe after the alleged rape, and also you're telling me she was waiting in a gas station for 5 hours for him? Again, it just doesn't sound realistic. Especially in the center of New York, or 20 minutes away from the center. It's still kind of central. Doe's father told NBC News that he does not recall picking up Doe, which unsurprisingly he said would have been something that would definitely stick in my mind. Doe's father also said that he first learned of the alleged rape when Doe gave an interview to NBC News on December 13th, 2024. Yeah, so I remember hearing his voice. They actually had his voice saying, I would remember that. That's something that would definitely stick in my mind. This poor guy, this girl, his daughter has put him through so much. And then he's got to be embarrassed by NBC News. He did not recall picking up Doe in the middle of the night on one occasion, but it was... Oh, he did recall. He did then recall picking up Doe in the middle of the night on one occasion, but it was a local drive. It strains credulity that defendants would not have learned that Doe's father had no recollection of a key aspect of Doe's story during their vetting process, right? You would think that would be one of the first things they'd do. Like, have you got any witnesses? Let's get some witness statements to see if this story can be verified. Fifth, even assuming Doe was outside the VMAs that evening, it was impossible for her to have approached celebrity limousines, as she claims, because publicly available video of the VMAs shows that the limousines were only outside of Radio City's Music Hall, briefly, for the drop-off. In any event, after drop-off, the celebrity limousines were moved to an area that was separated from fans by police barricades, as publicly available video of the event clearly shows, and thus were not accessible. So that's another one of her little bits of her story that is disproved. Sixth, during the NBC interview, when asked to provide greater detail about the purported after-party where she claimed to have been raped, Doe described an alleged conversation she had with the singer Benji Madden about his tattoo of the Last Supper. I mean, it's just embarrassing at this point. A representative from Madden confirmed to NBC News that neither he nor his brother Joel attended the 2000 VMAs, and that they and their band, Good Charlotte, were on tour in the Midwest. In the original complaint, defendants alleged that Doe spoke with a limousine driver who told her to return after the VMAs around 9:30 or 10 p.m. and that he would take her to a party. Defendants then alleged that Doe excitedly returned to the driver who drove her alone in a black limousine with black interior. I think when I was doing my video about this, I was like, there's just no way that a limousine driver would have done that. That's if they were going to pick up some random girl, she would have just been picked up with all the others. Like, these drivers are working, they're on the clock. This would have been factually impossible given the fact that the VMAs ended at 11 p.m. that night. Okay, so obviously I didn't know that. I just thought the whole story was just incredulous. On amendment, recognizing they had revealed themselves, defendants attempted to mask the impossibility of their original allegations by removing any allegations of specific times, alleging instead that later that evening Doe returned to the same spot to meet the driver and waited for what seemed to her a long time before she was driven to the purported party. However, even in this version of events, defendants' allegations are still factually implausible. Defendants alleged that the limousine driver had to first drive Coombs and others to the after party and then afterwards took Doe to the after party. The VMAs ended at 11:11, which means that the earliest Doe could have arrived at the after party by her own account is 12:11 a.m. The driver had to drive to the residence, back to Radio City Music Hall, and then back to the residence, and defendants alleged that the drive was approximately 20 minutes. Yet later, Doe alleges that she called her father to pick her up and that after an over 5.5 hour drive, he arrived to pick her up shortly before dawn. This would mean that she would have had to call her father no later than 12:48 p.m. So all of her allegations about the party, mingling with the celebrities, drinking a reddish-yellow mixture, finding a room to lie down in, Carter's rape, Coombs's attempted rape, and ensuing physical fight, and Doe's escape and run to the gas station all took place in 7 minutes. These allegations are physically impossible. Okay, so then they've got the NBC interview. I'm going to try and skip forward a little bit because she's a 38-year-old mother, by the way, from Alabama, that was driven by a friend from Rochester, New York to Manhattan. No way. Ain't no friend on earth that is going to drive you for 5 hours, 48 minutes and then not go with you to the party. Sorry. But... oh, God. So, yeah, during the interview, there were new fictional assertions. So she basically just went off script during the interview and started coming up with a whole load of other stuff. Adding emotional details. About Doe's father and presenting Doe's accusations as a personal public account rather than a summary of filed allegations, right? Thus, far from providing NBC News with a report about the underlying action, Doe used the Texas interview to broadcast a new first-person narrative of her supposed experience and purported motivations for coming forward for the first time. Think about it. Think about what actually happened there. And where's the outrage? Where's the actual outrage? In a follow-up interview of Doe by NBC News within 24 hours, Doe was confronted with a mountain of evidence contradicting her story. Well, at least they did do that, that's true, which NBC News uncovered in less than a week following the initial interview. The inconsistencies NBC News identified were not obscene or hard to find. NBC News uncovered them in a matter of days. Among other things, NBC News located photographs placing Carter at a different venue, confirmed that a celebrity Doe claimed to have seen was not at the VMAs, and obtained a statement from Doe's father that he did not recall making the multi-hour round-trip drive Doe described. In response to irrefutable proof of her lies, Doe admitted she made some mistakes. And she said something like, but what did she say? Something like, what? It was true to me, or something like, it's some very weird statement. It's the clearest, but she's like, but what I know is it's the clearest. She then shockingly disapproved her allegations about the location of the alleged incident and admitted she was just guessing. Even after being confronted with her lies, Doe did not drop her baseless complaint. In fact, even after NBC News questioned the new false allegations made during her interview, Doe stated, I stand by my statements. That was it. I stand by my statements, and that what is the clearest is what happened to me. Defendants instead insisted on moving forward and promised that Doe would submit to a polygraph. Defendants have unsurprisingly not revealed whether Doe took or passed her polygraph test. Well, I don't think you're allowed to do them if you take substances. The Texas interview was not ancillary to the underlying action. It was a separate defamatory publication designed to amplify and expand Doe's false allegation outside court, increase public pressure on Carter, and cause the very reputational harm defendants had threatened if Carter refused to pay. Doe waited months before dismissing her false complaint, and did so after being lied to by her attorneys for their own benefit. So we've been over that. They lied to her and said that he had threatened her life, when in actual fact they were about to get busted by the SDNY for filing false claims. Well, not having a license to file claims. On February 21st, 2025, during an interview outside her house, Doe confirmed to investigators that she had dropped the suit because her attorneys had told her that Carter had threatened her life. She also admitted that the idea to include allegations about Carter had come from Buzbee, and that Carter had not raped her. When investigators asked, but Jay-Z had nothing to do with this, correct? Doe answered, right. When asked, so I mean he did not assault you? Doe confirmed no. Later, when investigators clarified that they were not asking Doe to deny that something happened to her, but only to confirm that Jay-Z did not have anything to do with it and that he didn't SA you, Doe agreed that that was a fair assessment. Doe also admitted that the Buzbee defendants manipulated her with outrageous threats on her life that they falsely attributed to Carter. Doe stated that the lawyers told her Carter was threatening to kill her. When asked whether Buzbee told her there were threats against her life, Doe answered yes and stated that she was told anything else could get her in a lot of trouble and that Carter could come after her. Doe's father independently corroborated that the attorney defendants told Doe and her family that Carter had threatened her life. He stated that Doe dismissed the underlying action because of some threats, including very, very, very serious threats to her life and family. Her father stated that David Fortney got on a plane and flew all the way out here to take her through the threats, then flew back the same night. I wonder if it was on the private jet. That meeting took place the day before the dismissal of the underlying action. Those supposed threats, however, were fabricated by the Buzbee defendants to frighten Doe and keep her aligned with defendants' false narrative against Carter, and also are eviscerated by the February 1 statement from Buzbee's personal lawyer that would be dismissing the underlying action. These admissions confirm that Doe's continued pursuit and eventual dismissal of the underlying action were not good faith claims, but instead were the result of defendants' manipulation of an unreliable witness, whose allegations defendants had shaped, amplified, and used against Carter. On February 28, 2025, after Doe admitted to fabricating her claim against Carter, and after Buzbee, Fortney, and Curious became aware of those admissions, a prominent New York attorney serving as the Buzbee defendants' co-counsel called an attorney for Carter. During that call, the Buzbee defendants' New York co-counsel threatened that if Carter's attorneys filed anything in Carter's pending extortion and defamation case in California against Buzbee related to the statements made by Doe fully exculpating Carter. Is that the right word? Exculpating? And inculpating her and Buzbee in an extortion conspiracy, that Buzbee would issue a public statement by Doe that she was being threatened by Carter's people since she dropped the lawsuit. And two, she dropped the lawsuit only because she was afraid for her life, and that the allegations she made against Carter in the lawsuit were all true. Fortney met with Doe to convince her to drop the lawsuit. He did this by falsely telling Doe that she could get in a lot of trouble, and indeed that Carter was going to kill her. Of course, all allegations about Doe's life being threatened by Carter's people and her newly claimed reasons for dropping the lawsuit are and always were false. When Buzbee, Fortney, and their New York co-counsel repeated or threatened to repeat that narrative, they knew it was false. Indeed, no such allegations were brought to the attention of the court in the underlying action. The Buzbee defendants have since pivoted to a new explanation for the dismissal and now claim that Doe only dropped her lawsuit against Carter in furtherance of a negotiated dismissal agreed to on February 4th, 2025. However, that is also untrue. There was absolutely no negotiated dismissal or settlement of any type. Indeed, the Buzbee Defendants Counsel acknowledged in writing there was no settlement. See the declaration of Alex Spiro dated March 2025. Nor does the stipulation of discontinuance indicate that Doe dismissed her case as a result of a settlement, and neither she nor her father so claimed. The real reason for the dismissal are clear. The Buzbee defendants knew their conspiracy to extort Carter had failed, and that based on, among other things, the NBC interview, Doe and her story would not stand up to scrutiny. Defendants were now fearful that they were going to be sanctioned for filing a frivolous lawsuit, and Buzbee would be sanctioned by Judge Torres for litigating Doe's lawsuit without being admitted to the SDNY. So they fabricated a story and strong-armed Doe into dismissing her suit. In truth, had Doe agreed to dismiss her lawsuit on or about the purported February 4th, 2025, negotiated dismissal, Fortney would not have needed to meet with Doe to convince her to drop her lawsuit on February 13th, 2025. Good point. I just don't know how this is going to play out in the court. Further, Carter's counsel made clear to the Buzbee defendants, that Carter would never settle Doe's lawsuits or pay any money to resolve it. Carter's counsel also made clear that he would not dismiss Carter's lawsuit against Buzbee in California. Thus, the threats of extortion and further defamation continue to this day, necessitating that Carter take action to prevent unscrupulous actors from further preying on him. Carter was severely injured by defendants' misconduct. Doe's malicious lawsuit and its demonstrably false allegations that Carter raped her caused Carter to suffer actual and special damages, including but not limited to harm to his personal and professional reputation and harm to his business entity, Rock Nation, which resulted in his business suffering no less than $20 million in losses, representing a minimum fee guarantee, while the full fee would have been $80 million had the contract been performed. Wow. In addition to out-of-pocket loss and emotional harm, humiliation, and harassment, Carter individually is inextricably tied to his business, Rock Nation, which he co-founded. He is the control person of a 50% owner of Rock Nation. Carter is Rock Nation. Damages to one constitute damages to the other. In an industry dominated by personalities and relationships, those false allegations had the potential to cause, and in fact did cause, significant damages to Carter and his business interests. In addition, Rock Nation would have paid Carter a substantial fee for his services associated with the deal. Furthermore, as intended, defendants' filing inflicted tremendous harm to Carter's reputation that persists to this day. But the damage was not merely economic. Defendants' allegations emotionally devastated Carter and his children, wife, and family. I think he mentioned his grandma in his freestyle rap. As Carter stated in a record interview in GQ magazine, that whole lawsuit thing took a lot out of me. I was angry. I haven't been that angry in a long time. Uncontrollable anger. You don't put that on someone. That's a thing that you better be super sure. It used to be like that. You had to be super sure before you put those kind of things on a person. Defendants' actions also undermined Carter's relationship and his company, Rock Nation's relationship with their businesses in the sports and entertainment industry. For example, in violation... Oh, yeah. Wikipedia. For example, in violation of Wikipedia's rules, Buzbee directed his employees to edit Wikipedia pages to enhance Buzbee's image and damage Carter's and Rock Nation's reputations. Users with an IP address directly linked to the Buzbee law firm made over 100 positive edits to Buzbee's Wikipedia page, It is undisputed that Roc Nation and Carter have significant and extensive agreements to produce entertainment programs for certain sporting events. After defendants filed Doe's lawsuit, the media reported that other businesses could end their deals with Roc Nation and that the lawsuit would likely force these business partners to speak out and address how the allegations would affect or even end their business relationship. This is exactly the result defendants intended, banking on the fact that Carter would fear the reputational assassination, cave, and pay. As predicted, immediately after Buzbee and his co-conspirators went public with those false accusations, Roc Nation and Carter lost other contracts in the sports and entertainment space that would have generated at least $20 million in revenue, representing a minimum fee guarantee, while the full fee would have been $80 million had the contract been performed. This is because Roc Nation... Wait, I'm sure I just read that. Moreover, as a result of defendants' filing of the false lawsuit and other false public statements against Carter, Carter was denied a $55 million personal credit line. I think I remember reading about this. I do remember. I will say that I know Jay-Z was trying to open some huge gambling venue in the middle of New York, which I'm not really mad that ain't happening, if it ain't happening. But, I mean, I guess that has nothing to do with it. What the money was for. Anyway, it's just interesting to get a little insight, and this is how all this business and wealth is done. It's all through credit and assets and borrowing and growth. He was also denied a $115 million loan. I mean, as the loss of proceeds to Roc Nation, Carter will demonstrate how these losses have directly impacted him financially, opportunities that existed before now foreclosed. These quantifiable losses were directly caused by and connected to the false filing in New York federal court. I don't think anyone can argue that it hasn't damaged his reputation. Okay, so then he posted some of the comments that people have been writing. I mean, the amount of anti-Roc Nation content and comments and posts. I mean, that's what I went through the other day. I've kind of covered this quite extensively, so I don't need to. But yeah, I was going to say as well, I specifically remember that, speaking of astroturfing, which I've talked about a lot on this channel, as well as smear campaigns and troll farms and how it all works, I remember a lot of astroturfing comments saying that Jay-Z was going to go down. Jay-Z is next. Jay-Z is next. Such as what is being said here. I think even now you still see comments like that, but maybe not as much. It makes you think now, were those comments deliberately placed there in those, under those posts and videos and stuff? Even in live chats, I used to be watching other people's lives, and you would see Jay-Z coming up in live chats. So I had nothing to do with this before it was even talked about. Or maybe after the Maybe after this lawsuit was dismissed, actually. I think maybe during the trial, people were still saying it. Yeah, there was a lot of astroturfing going on. But accusing him of being a Satanist, yes, I've seen that. I've seen traffic, terrorist, monster. Of course, there was the whole thing with Jaguar, right? She accused him of sexually assaulting her. A lot of people believed it. Social media data shows that as of May 5th, 2025, defendants' case and the allegations against Carter have generated 1.3 million mentions and had the potential to be viewed nearly 15 billion times based on associated user data. And considering the guy doesn't even really use social media for his own personal, he doesn't have any really personal social media. He's he's probably the least social media hip hop figure there is, rapper anyway. When you think about how negatively people like Kanye West use it, the Nets, and let's not even get started on Drake, the net sentiment score, a metric used to capture whether sentiment about a person, a person, entity, or story is positive, negative, or neutral for that content regarding Carter is 94% negative. And although Carter's net sentiment score was only 40% to 41% negative in 2022 and 2023, his net sentiment score rose to 79% negative since Doe made her false allegation against Carter. So I guess they're going to be producing some expert reports on this. Defendants are jointly and severally liable as co-conspirators for the harm inflicted on Carter. This is conspiracy allegations. Defendants agreed and worked together and planned and knowingly and willingly conspired to maliciously prosecute and defame Carter. Defendants agreed to initiate and continue the false and malicious lawsuit and to conduct the Texas interview in the shared objective of extorting Carter through false and damaging accusations, thereby causing harm to his reputation and financial well-being. In doing so, defendants intended to harm Carter. Each and every one of defendants took an overt act or acts in furtherance of their malicious prosecution of Carter. Defendant Buzbee, as Doe's attorney, filed the underlying action against Carter and other entities, knowing the claims were fabricated or recklessly disregarding the truth that the claims were fabricated. Defendant Fortney, okay. Curious defendants. So they're really pushing that NBC News interview as part of the conspiracy. This bit worries me a little bit. The curious bit, only because she already got let off. So I'm like, she got let off once. It just, I don't know. It just seems like when it comes to dealing with their own, the lawyers don't really seem to there doesn't seem to be a lot of punishment for wrongdoing in the legal system by the actual people that are practicing law. Maybe this could be the turning point. That's why it's such an interesting case. Defendant Doe actively participated in the formulation of and prosecution of false claims against Carter in the underlying action and made even more egregious false allegations against Carter during the Texas interview. The conduct of these defendants caused Carter's harm. Defendants' collective conduct, including their malicious prosecution, was intentional and calculated to cause Carter injury. Their conspiracy was executed to extort money from Carter and to damage his personal, professional, and business reputation. So I guess what I've seen of some of these other cases, like if they can prove malice beyond a reasonable doubt, because obviously this is a jury trial, then they're going to win. But they're going to try and argue that it was good faith. So that's what we're going to have to really push. Okay, so we're getting near the end. I'm not sure whether this paying something of substance. I don't. Because I saw something about an 8-figure sum. I mean, it seems to be no doubt that every single accusation she made every detail in the accusation made was false, and that none of it checked out and none of it was verified. They obviously didn't have a single witness or a corroborating statement. That part seems undeniable. So then he's going to have the arguing the losses. I know that's going to be tough, but seems like a very specific amount. And if he tries to go for the look, so here we go. Second cause of action, judiciary law 487 against the Buzbee defendant and the curious defendants. Carter repeats and realleges the allegations in the foregoing paragraphs of this complaint as if fully set forth herein. New York judiciary law 487 imposes civil liability on any attorney who is guilty of any deceit or collusion or consents to any deceit or collusion with intent to deceive the court or any party. So this is a specific law supposed to hold attorneys accountable. The Buzbee defendants and the curious defendants engaged in precisely such conduct within the territorial limits of New York. At all relevant times, the Buzbee defendants and the curious defendants were licensed attorneys acting in that capacity. In the underlying action, they served as counsel of record for Doe, and in that role signed and caused to be filed pleadings and submissions before the court, including the initial complaint, the amended complaint, and letters to the court, each of which was undertaken in their professional capacity and during the pendency of an active federal action. The Buzbee defendants and the curious defendants engaged in repeated affirmative acts of deceit upon the court by filing false allegations and affidavits containing false statements. By signing and filing the complaint and the amended complaint, the Buzbee defendants and the curious defendants certified to the court that after a reasonable investigation, the factual allegations in those pleadings had evidentiary support. That certification was false.
the attorney defendants had not conducted a reasonable investigation into Doe's allegations before filing them in federal court. I mean, it's just like every single thing about what they did seems to be improper. I just don't know. I don't have that much faith in the legal system, but I'm trying to be positive. Okay, so they're just repeating the same stuff, but there's one thing that I wanted to I remember it from the last complaint, was talking about her TikTok. Right? They might have taken it out, but that's how I found her on TikTok, because they said that she was bragging on TikTok, saying that she didn't feel bad. She said it was something like, I forget the exact words, but it was like, I ain't sorry, something like that. And I actually literally found her on TikTok by searching the exact words that she said. That's how I found her account. Oh, she said she suffered a head injury. Damn. Okay, so the third cause of action is defamation against Doe. Defamation is so hard to win. That's something I've realized through following a lot of these cases. Really, really hard. However, being the sort of the scale of public figure that he is, surely that counts for something. Because what's her name that was cited in the hearing yesterday, EJ Carroll, she won against Trump. You can't get much more powerful than him at the moment. So I guess there is some justice for some people. So they're really pushing this thing about the NBC News interview. Nor did Doe merely repeat allegations from her complaint. They're saying that like she literally used the NBC News, like the NBC News item wasn't just reporting on the lawsuit. She used that as an opportunity to make further allegations that were even more shocking, even more disturbing, like that he put his hand over her mouth and basically added new supposed details to bolster her story, including statements about her autism diagnosis, head injury, medical treatment, Benji Madden, the alleged friend who supposedly drove her to New York, and her father's alleged conduct after the supposed rape. These are new factual assertions, not reports of judicial allegations, and they materially expanded the false accusations against Carter. You know? When people say about, this is not good for real victims or actual victims, this really isn't. This is not a good look for NBC. Oh, here we go. Doe acted with constitutional malice. Doe either knew that her statements against Carter were false or acted with reckless disregard for the truth. Even upon having sufficient grounds to withdraw her false statements against Carr with the release of the NBC News article, Doe continued to threaten, through her attorney Buzbee, criminal prosecution against Carter and maintain the underlying action. And Doe still has not stopped. As recently as April 11th, 2025, this is over a year ago, Doe made a post on TikTok with a lip-synced audio track stating that you couldn't pay me $1 million to get an apology video out of me. I stand on what I said. F you. Yeah, I literally, that's what I looked up, and I found her video. By refusing to apologize and continuing to stand on what she said, despite all the evidence and indeed her own admissions to the contrary, Doe continues to display a shocking and reckless disregard for the truth that is both intentional and malicious. And also, this is a 38-year-old woman who's had her kids taken away from her. She's literally on TikTok making stupid videos like that. Jesus. I don't think she's going to come across as a very likable witness. Doe never had any reasonable grounds to support any truth in her statements and acted with disregard for the truth. In other words, she lied. Tellingly, even after recanting portions of her complaint in the Texas interview, when pressed to come forward with the truth, she refused. Instead, Doe responded, "How does this help me?" Accordingly, Carter is entitled to an award of all damages available under the law, including compensatory damages, special damages, and punitive damages. We're finally at the end. So, prayer for relief, which I now know is not really anything to do with prayer. It's just a statement of what they're asking for. An award of assumed and actual damages in an amount to be determined by the finder of fact. An award of treble damages pursuant to Judiciary Law 487. An award of punitive damages, reasonable costs and legal fees pursuant to applicable law, pre- and post-judgment interest as applicable, and any other relief the court deems just and proper. Dated July 29th, 2026, New York, New York. Okay. Finally, we got to the end. Okay. That's all I've got for tonight. It's been super long. Oh, I didn't realize there was some in my chat. Sorry. Buzbee was a fraud all along. Ambulance chaser with false allegations, right? Yeah. 1-800. Did you hear Jay-Z's rap about him? It was funny. I don't think a lot of people got it. She can lie her way around anyone. Sorry, I'm just trying to zoom in because my eyesight's got a bit funny because I've been sitting here for so long. Fake allegations just to smear someone's name is pathetic. I agree, and I don't feel particularly comfortable saying that a woman makes false allegations, but I mean 3-4 people now. And then, like I said, if you do want to go and look for her on TikTok, I mean, I'm not advising anyone to do that, but yeah, she doesn't come across as a very sympathetic person. Buzbee messed the wrong one this time. You're convinced she definitely has a history of mental illness. 100. I want to say it's probably substance related. I'm pretty damn sure. When someone's had their kids taken off of them, that's normally a sign that they're neglecting their kids because they're not sober. And speaking of substance abuse, I wouldn't be surprised if Buzbee is like that as well. But anyway, oh, no problem. Thank you for joining. Right, I'm still here. I just locked myself out of the studio. Right. Yeah, thank you for joining me. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. I'm gonna definitely do further updates if there's any discovery uploaded. I'm looking forward to seeing that. Yeah. See you all later. Bye. Don't forget to like and subscribe as well.